Hi guys, good morning. All right, thanks for coming back to Cat on Point. This is going to be a video where we talk about interstitial cystitis. In case you're interested in that, or in case you're wondering how I deal with that and you're dealing with it too, maybe I'm going to have some helpful tips for you. I don't know. Now, I want to say right at the beginning that I'm not a medical professional and I'm not giving medical advice. So you definitely, anything that I say, you want to check it out on your own and check it out with your medical professional yourself. So that being said, I'm just sharing with you my experience with IC and how I live with it. So basically, again, interstitial cystitis is something that I was born with. I want to say born with or developed very early on. But the symptoms there's so many symptoms that come with it. But one of the biggest one is you feel like you have a really bad urinary tract infection when you don't have one. And sometimes you do have one with it, with a flare-up, but so you're dealing with two things at one time. Now, when I was a little girl, I was probably about 6 or 7 years old, I think, when I first started noticing the symptoms. And I felt like, I'm sorry, I'm getting oh, there's my urologist finally calling me back. Hold on a second. All right, so we'll talk about the urologist in a minute. But anyway, when I was pretty young, about 6 or 7, I started noticing that when I would, I'm going to be very frank when I talk about this because there's really no other way to do it. So if you don't want to hear this talk about, UTIs and stuff like that, then don't listen. But it is a part of life. So I was about 6 or 7 or so, and I would tell my mom, well, Mom, I went to the bathroom and it burns, right? It burns and it hurts and I'm very uncomfortable. Now, my mom didn't know anything about IC. I don't think she believed that I had a UTI for some reason. She thought, well, maybe you just have a rash, and her answer was to maybe stick some baby powder in my underwear and, it'll just make you feel better. So that's what I would do. But I would deal with that. And so I just kind of developed this tolerance for that kind of pain. So honestly, when I have a really bad UTI or when I have a really bad flare-up for IC, the pain tolerance is through the roof because I've just lived with this kind of thing off and on all my life. So fast forward to when I became an adult and I was still having these symptoms, but they were much worse. And so I would go in and see the doctor. And of course, when you have IC, sometimes you don't have that UTI. It just feels like you have a really bad urinary tract infection, but you don't. It just feels really, really terrible. And so I went into the doctor. And at the time, my husband was in the military, so we were going on to the base doctors. And they would say, your tests are clean, you're negative, you don't have a UTI. So I don't know what the deal is. And so I'd say, no, something is really going on. I'm in so much pain. And people didn't really know about IC back then, I guess. It just wasn't really as well known and studied as it is becoming, nowadays. And so their answer to me one day was, the doctor said, well, it could be that you're just not eliminating everything, and so you're leaving yourself open to infection. But wait a minute, I thought they said I didn't have an infection. So in any case, their answer was, what we can do is go in and just cut the opening to the bladder, and then that way everything will just fall out and you won't, leave any sort of residue behind open to infection. And I'm thinking, I already have so much pain. I can't see you going in and just cutting and snipping and then having to heal from that. And then I figured, I probably would never be able to hold it after that. So I said, you know what? I'll deal with this on my own. That's fine. Fast forward a few years later, more and more years, and I was in a bookstore and I think it was like Walden books, which are, I think, all gone now. But we were at the mall and we were looking through the books, and I was looking for some sort of help, right? Because again, I'm just living with this and dealing with it on my own. I ran across a book, and I don't know if it was the Wendy Cohen book back then or not, but it was the first mention of interstitial cystitis that I had ever seen. And I was reading the symptoms and I thought, this is exactly what I have. This is exactly my life. And I remember being so happy that I wasn't crazy and that somebody else was dealing with these symptoms. Not that they're dealing with them, but the fact that it wasn't just me. It wasn't in my mind. It was happening. It was a real thing. And since then, there have been other doctors now. Now the doctors that I see, they totally have diagnosed me as, yes, you have IC. And, this is how we treat it. And so they're starting to work with their patients more to manage the symptoms of IC, including from everything from pelvic floor exercises. Sorry, I have a hair floating around here. To, bladder installations, things like that. And that's where they kind of like blow up the bladder with a solution that's going to be a calming solution. It's going to soothe your bladder for a little while and give you some relief, because some people really need that. And I choose not to do the installations because to me, that seems a little bit more severe. And if I can manage it on my own, I would rather do that. But I'm happy to know that they have procedures now like that I can fall back on if I feel like I want to do something like that. So in any case, my doctor just phoned, and yes, I still have a UTI culture from the lab. And this is another thing too. If you go to, a lot of people say, why don't you just go to Quick Care? Because Quick Care, when they take a urine sample and they do a test there, many times they will not find the bacteria that, if your doctor sends it for a more intensive lab test, they will find it, but they will not find it at the Quick Care. So they'll send you on your way and you will suffer that way. And that happened to me last year. I went into Quick Care because, I also had IC flare up. So it was just like a crazy pain. And I went in and I said, I'm sure I have a UTI. They took a test and they said, nope, you're all clear. We're not giving you anything. Go along your merry way. And I just was beside myself because I didn't know what to do. So I went to my urologist. They had gotten me in there. It was a miracle. And they sent that culture to the lab. And she said, yes, you don't just have one type of bacteria. You have like 2 or 3 different types of bacteria causing a UTI. So they found it then, but it wasn't for 2 weeks later that I finally got treatment for that UTI. So at that point, I had it about like a month straight. And so it could be quite long until you get help sometimes, because if you have IC, it doesn't always show up. And then IC, sometimes my doctor says that it comes clean. And so you just have to deal with the symptoms, right? So one of the things that, if you do have to take antibiotics, do not forget to take probiotics with the antibiotic. You cannot take it at the same time. I believe you have to take these an hour or an hour and a half or so before you take the antibiotic. I'll have to look that up. Actually, it's either about 1 to 2 hours beforehand, I believe, or afterward. But you don't take them at the same time. But you do need probiotics because you have to, the medication you're taking for the UTI is going to kill off all the bacteria, even the good bacteria that you have, not only in your gut, but it's going to kill off the bacteria that you need in your feminine parts that you need that bacteria to keep you from getting further infections and leaving yourself open to infections. And so it's going to interfere with the flora that is in that area. So you do need to replenish your probiotics, and definitely after you're done taking it, after you get done taking your prescribed antibiotics, you definitely want to be on your probiotics and make sure you're doing that. Another one that I picked up from Amazon was this women's balance complex. It's bladder support, and also it has probiotics in it as well. And then for that matter, Azo has also come out with a probiotic, and this is 1 a day, and this is for bladder health as well. And this is going to help you replenish the good bacteria in that area. Now, if you are someone who deals with frequent UTIs, or you deal with IC, and you want to keep from getting those UTIs, another thing you want to have, and again, I'm not giving advice, seek your doctor's approval for everything. This is just what I do. Have D-mannose in your medicine cabinet. And this is a supplement. I take 3 veggie tablets per day right now. And this, for lack of a better way to put it, it's going to keep the bacteria from adhering to the walls of the bladder. And so that's going to be very helpful. Oh, and then another thing everybody knows about the Azo, right? Azo is something that is going to help to soothe your bladder and keep you from experiencing too much of that pain while you're dealing with a UTI, or even if you're dealing with symptoms of IC, right? And it just kind of calms it down for a little bit. But you don't want to do too much of this. You really need to look out and be careful with this, because if you take too much, you could, it actually says it on the package, if you overdo this, you can get cancer. And that's really something that's very scary. All right, another thing that my sister shared with me, which has been a really big help, is this Buku Life, or Buchu Life. I'm not sure how you say it, but I got it from Amazon. Again, check with your doctor, because this is one of those supplements that if you take too much, you really don't want to harm your liver. I have a liver issue as it is, so I need to watch it when I do things like that. But this is a UTI relief. It comes from a certain plant from South Africa, and they make these in little soft gels. They mix it with some flaxseed oil. So it's a type of a medicinal, natural oil. But one thing that I noticed with this is it just made me feel like overnight, it made me feel like I didn't have a UTI, even if I did. It just really took away some of those symptoms. And so that's something that I'm just going to have in my medicine cabinet just for such an occasion until I can get to the doctor and see her. I did tell her I was taking that. She didn't have a problem with it. That's my doctor, though. So if you are dealing with IC, one thing that you know is to modify your diet, right? And so there's things that you stay away from. You stay away from chocolate, unfortunately. You stay away from caffeine of any sort. It's going to stimulate your bladder. You're going to stay away from anything with tomato sauce or any citric acid, oranges, lemons, grapefruits, things like that. And one thing you want to do is to cut the acid down, right? So one thing you might want in your repertoire is this pre-leaf. I get this from Amazon, and this cuts about 95% of the acid from the foods that you eat. So if you think you're eating something that's kind of iffy, and you take one of these, it kind of helps it really does help, and it cuts that acid down, way down. So another thing you might want to do is change your vitamin C. If you take vitamin C, it has a lot of citric acid in it, and that's going to irritate your bladder. So you might want to, if you take it, think about switching to Ester C, which is a lower acid vitamin C. This is 500 milligrams. And this I order online because I don't always find this. Walmart used to carry it, and then sometimes it's yes, sometimes it's no. So that's a good a good one for vitamin C. But anyway, a good rule of thumb for me is that if it burns my mouth and if it irritates my mouth or tingles my tongue, it's probably going to do the same thing to my bladder. So I usually stay away from it. But there are some foods like that don't do that still might harm you and might, cause an icy flare-up. If you have not seen this book, the Better Bladder book, this is from Wendy Cohen, a registered nurse. This is everything that has to do with the bladder health, and she talks about IC in here and managing those symptoms as well. I highly recommend having that book as a resource for you to go to. But she talks in here about many people who have IC, since it's an autoimmune condition, to stay away from gluten. Something that I have now is gluten. I don't have a ton of it, but I do have it now. I was gluten-free at one point, and I just found it very hard to integrate into community and functions and things like that, because I didn't want always my host to have to worry about that. And sometimes I didn't want to have to carry my own bread with me. And I just thought, you know what, let me see if I can add it in small amounts and see if that'll work for me. And I can pretty much manage it so far. But when I'm in a flare-up like I am now, I really do cut back a lot on it. So I might have bread like once per day or something like that. And then go with, rice or potatoes or something else, at other times. If you have any other questions about how I handle IC or anything like that, just write them down below. I'd be really glad to answer them if you have them. I hope that if you suffer with IC that you will find relief in either some of the suggestions I had or, with your doctor. So I just wish you all the best. It's a very hard condition to live with. And I'm still dealing with symptoms right now, but it's a lot better. This has been a month of pain management, and I'm doing a lot better now. So anyway, love you guys a lot, and I hope you're having a wonderful day.